Carolyn, you just had a riveting panel with Victor Davis Hanson, and you discussed the erosion of the rights of citizens at the hands of a international national elite. Can you talk a little bit about what trends you've seen developing?
I mean, what we're seeing more and more, and it's been going on for at least a generation, which is that you have the ruling classes of advanced Western democracies that have lost interest in their own nations, and they become post-nationalist. In Israel, it's described as post-Zionism. In America, it's post-Americanism, where they think that the whole concept of a nation state and of their own people, we the people, is not only antiquated but racist. In Israel, having a Jewish state, it's as if our elites have internalized the concept that Zionism is a form of racism that we worked so hard to get repealed in the UN General Assembly. And yet, when you see what's happening here in America, in Europe as well, with this castigation, the demonization of the people, and anybody who stands up and leads them, then you see that what we have here is a treacherous ruling class in all of these countries that has essentially lost interest in who they are, where they came from, the people that are with them, and instead their eyes are turned toward their comrades in this transnational movement, which is basically a form of repression, a form of totalitarianism also, as it's expressed in societies where you demonize everybody who opposes you and use fancy words like equity in order to justify what you're doing.
Well, we've seen this trend in the United States now for a number of years, and it also seems as though Israel is, on the one hand, following America, and maybe some of Israel's elites are trying to imitate some of America's elites, and yet on the other hand, there is a pushback, and you see that at conferences like this, the Tikvah Conservative Conference.
And at things like JNS.org, which are trying to, be a voice of the silenced. It's not that the majority is silenced; it's that they're being silenced, that they're being gagged, that they're being told that everything that we value and everything that we believe in and hold sacred is racist or archaic or wrong and immoral in some way. And so, there is a pushback, but it's a hell of an uphill climb because, it's very difficult as a practical matter for a society to be able to restore itself when the people who hold the levers of power are not interested in a restoration of their societies. So, that's really, at sort of an existential level, something that we're all facing. And also, there are so many seductive things about the ruling class. First and foremost, power, and we see the seduction of power for a significant portion of the right in Israel that defected to the far left and formed a post-Zionist government that's controlled by the Muslim Brotherhood, which is what we're seeing now. Victor gave a speech at Pepperdine that I watched, ahead of the conversation that we had this morning. And, I was thinking about what to ask him. And he said that a year ago he had written a column, I think he said he titled it 12 Things to Do to Ruin the Country. And he quipped. He said, I hadn't meant it as an instruction guide, as an instruction manual, but that the Biden administration has essentially done everything. And, in 15 months in power, they've wrecked the United States, and we're seeing that the current government in Israel has been in power for about a year now, and they've undermined 74 years of Zionism in 12 months, and we're facing a crisis, particularly with our Arab citizens, the likes of which we've never seen before.
Right. I think that the dream that the Arabs living in Israel would become Arab Israelis has now been realized as Palestinians living with Israeli citizenship. How did we not understand the trends that we're developing, and what do we do now?
That's a huge question. Look, in my book that I came out with 9 years ago, The Israeli Solution, a one-state plan for peace in the Middle East, I was looking at an opposite trend that was occurring among Israeli Arabs and also throughout the Arab world as a reaction to the failed Islamic revolutions of the Arab Spring. When I wrote the first manuscript, Egypt was under Muslim Brotherhood rule after Mubarak had been ousted, and Tunisia as well, and Arab Israelis were rushing to integrate into Israeli society as Arab Israelis 9 years ago. They were joining the army. 90% of the Arab youth wanted to serve in national service. Suddenly, some unprecedented numbers of Arab Israelis who it said that their Israeli citizenship was more valuable than their Muslim identity, which was just like unprecedented and shocking. And you even saw it among Jerusalem Arabs who aren't full Israeli citizens. They have Israeli residency, and then the trend. And so I wrote a book where I was making the argument that we could integrate not only Israeli Arabs, based on the integration of Arab Israelis, we could also integrate Palestinians. And what happened in the intervening years is a number of things. First of all, you had the international left and the Israeli left that were doing everything that they could to eradicate this fellow feeling among Israeli Arabs by empowering the most radical irredentist factions inside of Israeli Arab society that are all the Knesset members who represent Arab Israelis. There was no effort on the part of the government to support and back this. I'm not sure that people were really even realizing what was happening. And obviously the Palestinian Authority and Hamas, the Islamic movement here, were very active in undermining this and in discrediting the voices that were coming out for the first time in support of Israel among Israeli Arabs. And they won. I mean, I'd like to think that they won this round, but they won. And at this point, the situation is completely reversed among Israeli Arabs and obviously under Palestinians. Because, I mean, the thing with Israeli Arabs is that to the extent that they mobilize as Palestinians. And Palestinian society is a mobilized society. Jewish society was for a long time a mobilized society, but as we become more prosperous, we become less mobilized. As we become more prosperous, we become less mobilized, and as they become more prosperous, they become more mobilized. The more we keep bringing them economic prosperity, thinking that if we have, if they learn how to code, if they do all of these things, if we develop an upper middle class, then we're going to have a different dynamic politically, and we do. But the dynamic that we're getting politically is the exact opposite of what people had anticipated. That greater economic prosperity among the Palestinians in Judea and Samaria have made them more radical in their politics. And I guess this shouldn't be a surprise, because what we found in 2000, 2002, 2003, 2004, the years of the serious Palestinian terror campaign against Israel, a disproportionate number of the suicide bombers were university students, so that they came from middle-class families, they were educated, and they were the ones who were killing themselves to murder Jews. And so I guess that shouldn't have been a surprise, but that is actually now a mass phenomenon that we're seeing. So I think we missed that moment in a really fundamental way, and maybe it was an illusion. Maybe it was a pipe dream. Maybe I wanted to see something that wasn't exactly there. And at any rate,
what's the learning, and where do we go from here?
I think that the learning here is that we have to be mobilized. That we have to be able to command respect. If you can't appease respect. You can't go down on your knees and beg people to accept you. You have to be somebody that they want to respect. And what we're seeing now is that we're getting more and more demonstrations of hatred, of contempt among Arab Israelis towards their Jewish neighbors. And of course, we had the pogroms a year ago in all the mixed Arab-Jewish cities, where they were burning synagogues, burning Jewish businesses, Jewish homes, Jewish cars, and beating Jews up in the street because they're Jewish. And so we get violence, we get contempt, we get hatred, and we get this sense that we get this attitude of this is our country, you're temporary, your time is up. And I think that the only way to respond to that is by making clear that it's not true. And unfortunately, with the current government, because it's completely dependent on these irredentist and Islamist, voices and forces inside of Israeli Arab society, that it's just going to get much worse before it can get better, because this government cannot exist without the support of the Muslim Brotherhood.
This is the first time that an Arab party has ever been in an Israeli coalition. Was this the breaking of a glass ceiling, or do you think this is a one-and-done phenomenon where Israel will learn some lessons?
Look, if it is, there are two things. One is, if it's not a one-and-done phenomenon under the current prevailing circumstances of Israeli Arab society, then we're done, because we can't do this again so long as you have Arab political body politic that fundamentally rejects and is mobilized to destroy Israel. When you have polling data that's showing that 75% of Israeli Arabs reject Israel's right to exist, then you see that you have a problem here of epic proportions. It's an existential threat. And so until you are able to dispel the notion that Israel is going somewhere, that we're actually temporary, then you can't have your government beholden to forces that want to destroy the country. You can't. And so, I'm very hopeful. And again, we had that moment, and maybe I was deluding myself, but I'm not a delusional person. I like to think that when I look at things in a much more analytical way, and then I'm watching phenomenon and making decisions on whether they're true or not before I decide that they are. But we had a period in 2012, 2013, 2011 that went on till around, I would say, if I had to put a finger on it, maybe 5 years ago. It was still fairly strong, where Arab Israelis wanted to be Israeli Arabs, and by large numbers, and maybe they weren't as large as I thought. I don't know. I mean, you always have to worry, are you going to be that Pauline Kael lady who said, how could Nixon have won the presidency? I don't know anybody who voted for him. That you're not listening to your own echo chamber. But I think that a strong, successful Israel that is confident about the justness of who we are and of the inherent morality of the Jewish state and of Zionism, then the more likely it is that we'll get that back. And then the question of coalition, yes or no, is not even going to be asked. There are people who are Arab Israelis today who I would bring in as foreign minister, but today, but because they're amazing and they get it, and they understand what's at stake and why it's good for them to be Arab Israelis, that this is an incredible country and it has something to offer to all of its citizens. It's a Jewish state, as the Balfour Declaration said, the national rights of the Jewish people in the land of Israel, nobody else. Everybody else gets political rights, religious freedoms, all the rest of it, but this is a nation state of the Jewish people. That's it. And there are a lot of people who get that. And the problem is our left, our elites, just to go back to where I started the conversation with Victor Davis Hanson this morning. When you have elites who have fundamentally, they cut themselves off from the mothership, from their people, who now want to be part of a transnational gestalt that undermines or that rejects with contempt and hatred their people, it's very difficult to get to where we need to be.
But isn't this a severe failure of Israel's right? Because this left wing is a relative minority in the Israeli society, and you had members of Israel's right that decided it was more important to sit with this left-wing ideology as well as with the Muslim Brotherhood than it was to form a large center-right coalition.
Well, here too, I think it's also a question of, are you a phony or are you for real? It works out, right, that Naftali Bennett and Ayelet Shaked, who I once considered not really Ayelet, but Naftali was a friend of mine, it works out that they were big phonies, that they were lying about what they care about. They don't care about anything but themselves, and they were lying for over a decade. And and Gideon Sa'ar also, Tikvah Chadasha, and obviously Avigdor Lieberman. But you look and you see, well, there's a seductive power to power. And when the left controls the media and the public discourse in Israel, and when they control all of the fancy prize committees, and they control all of the fancy institutions in your country, and the powerful institutions in your country, then the allure of that power and those people is very enormous. The establishment in Israel is incredibly powerful and unapologetic about its power, and and if you want to join it, you have to join it on the establishment's terms, and it works out that that's what Naftali and Ayelet preferred to do, and they led us down this garden path.
Now, you said in the panel, in the conversation with Victor Davis Hanson, that you're pessimistic. Can you give us a cause or a reason for optimism that things can turn around?
Yeah, I believe in God. I think that I believe in the Jewish people. I think that we're going to wake up and we're going to turn around. We didn't come here in order to be destroyed in some 4 years. It's just not going to happen. But the reason I'm pessimistic is not because I don't think that things will come out on top. I'm pessimistic because at this point, with each passing day, the price that we're going to have to pay in order to get there increases. So it's not that the ultimate outcome is in doubt as far as I'm concerned, but the question is, how much damage do we do to ourselves every day that we have a government that's controlled by the Muslim Brotherhood? And the answer is we do enormous damage to ourselves. Yesterday, the Knesset Finance Committee just allocated $740 million to Arab autonomy. They're building a separate state in the Negev and in the Galilee with this money. This is a huge amount of money, and how do you walk that back? There are things here that have long-term consequences for the country that are happening every day. And so that's why, I feel a profound sense of urgency here as well. People are like, oh, Carolyn, you're becoming so outspoken because, I was always just a shrinking violet, in the past. But, it's because we've never been in a situation like this before. Just never have been in a situation. I've been in Israel now. I made Aliyah May 28th, 1991. So it's almost 31 years. It'll be 31 years. What day of the week is it? Like this week, right? So we've been through terrible things in this country in 31 years, but I don't.
Yet we kind of succeed despite ourselves.
I don't think we've been in a situation like this because it's not. A colleague of mine said to me yesterday. I don't know if I can quote him, so I won't. I'll wait till he writes it. But he said that again. The Arab Israelis. It's not terrorism per se that we're facing. It is, but it's a rebellion. It's the sense that that they think that we're on our way out and they want to push us out the door. And that and a rebellion in an integrated society it's like it. There's I have a profound sense of foreboding. But again, this is our country. This is our land. These are our people, and we don't have another land. We don't have another people. We don't have another land, and I think we'll be able to fix it. But like I said, the difficulty increases every day.
Carolyn, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.